Welcome everybody to our monthly edition of a Zoomcast for California School Choice. As is our practice, we will be opening with an invocation, and that will be presented by our favorite doctor on our team, Dr. Dale Broom. Dr. Broom.
Let's go ahead and bow our heads and we'll pray. Father, we come before you today because we are engaged in a mighty battle, a very difficult battle to get school choice in this state. Lord, we know that this is a good and a righteous cause. We want children to be able to receive a high quality education, and we want the parents to be able to choose what is best for their children. And Lord, we just want to lift up and pray that you would help us to persevere in this fight, because it is a difficult battle. It's a lot of work. We've got a lot of people to communicate with all across the state. We pray for your favor in the eyes of the public. We pray for perseverance and strength, because some of us are getting weary and getting tired. But Lord, our battle is really just beginning. And I'm reminded of this passage of scripture that says, let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we will reap if we do not give up. As for you, brothers, do not grow weary in doing good, for you have need of endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what is promised. And Lord, we just lift up and pray that you would help us accomplish and get school choice in this state. We pray this now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Huh? And if you could put up the flag for us, we'll do the pledge. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we do our first guest, I would like to ask all of us, as we're engaged in this process, to remember to speak the truth, to do your duty, and God will look after the rest, just like it was stated in the Declaration of Independence. We go forth with a firm reliance on divine providence. That said, our first speaker, we are so delighted and privileged to have. Mr. Larry Sand has spoken quite literally all over the country. He is well published in op-eds and journals throughout the United States. He has his own advocacy organization for teachers, and he was a teacher himself. He is probably one of the best voices for school choice that we have in California. For that, I would like to introduce Mr. Larry Sand. Larry.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the kind words, Steve, I should say. And thank you, Mike, for doing all you're doing. And thank you all for being here. I'm going to talk for maybe 20 minutes on critical race theory. And I'm going to just do basically the ABCs, tell you a few stories. If anybody has any questions, I can try to answer them. And if anybody needs more info, I can make my email address available so you can email me with any questions you might have. And I don't have all the answers, but I know people, some smart people who can answer your questions if I can't. Okay, critical race theory, or CRT, as I will call it, makes race the prism through which all its proponents analyze all aspects of American life. It underpins identity politics and reimagines the U.S. as a nation split into groups, each with specific claims on, on victimization. CRT normalizes a belief system of, a belief in systemic racism for the average American. CRT says that society is made up of oppressors and the oppressed, and that oppressed impede revolution when they adhere to the cultural beliefs of their oppressors and must be put through re-education sessions. This in turn leads to the dismantling of all societal norms through relentless criticism. CRT creates hostile school environments with its emphasis on oppressors and oppressed. Diversity, equity, inclusion, you probably have heard these terms, are omnipresent in CRT. Epic Education, a provider of CRT curricula, instructs teachers on how to talk about race, and this is typical of what they do. It says that CRT is a framework that helps us understand that racism is endemic to American life. They express skepticism toward dominant legal claims of neutrality, objectivity, colorblindness, and meritocracy, things we all value, I would hazard to say, and presumes that racism has contributed to all contemporary manifestations of group advantage and disadvantage. CRT suggests that one way to end alleged racial bias is via equity. Remember this word if you've never heard it before, because you're going to hear it a lot. It's a nice sounding word, but what is equity? As the race-obsessed Ibram X. Kendi explains, equity exists when two or more racial groups are standing in relatively equal footing. In other words, if 10% of white kids in a school are in a school's gifted program, equity demands that 10% of black kids are also included. Kendi also claims there is no such thing as a non-racist or a race-neutral policy. Terms like equality and quality are nowhere to be found in the equity playbook. What CRT is apparently saying is that we must discriminate to put an end to alleged discrimination. But insane or not, this is what is actually happening throughout much of the country and very sadly in our schools these days. Here are just a few examples of what I'm talking about. In reliably woke San Francisco, the top-rated Lowell High School no longer admits students based on their academic performance. Instead, the school used a lottery for admittance. This will, of course, discriminate against Asian students who make up half the student body. Similarly, in New York City, the Gifted and Talented program has been deemed unfair. Mayor Bill de Blasio and his school's chancellor, Richard Carranza, insist that testing program is unjust because the students who wind up in the program, and I quote, don't reflect the diversity of the city's population, end quote. In Fairfax, Virginia, Fairfax County, I should say, in Virginia, Thomas Jefferson High School of Science, school for the gifted, was ranked the #1 school in the country, according to U.S. News and World Report. But the school recently decided to eliminate the race-blind, merit-based admissions test to the largely Asian school, arguing that high test performance was a barrier to Black and Hispanic students. And Oregon, those in charge with running or ruining public education, perhaps more aptly, have decided that focusing on finding the right answer in math and showing your work is a symbol of white supremacy. I'm not making this stuff up. Teachers are urged to adapt homework policies to fit the needs of students of color and, quote, challenge the way that math is used to uphold capitalist, imperialist, and racist views, end quote. You cannot satirize this stuff, people. More on math in a bit. It was originally thought that CRT would not go very far in the mainstream, but rather continue to generate scholarly papers and debate and would never penetrate the nation's classrooms. Wrong. And at the same time, kids are learning about, I don't know, sex, global warming, and now CRT. What aren't they learning? 27% of those under the age of 45 nationally, only 27% are able to demonstrate a basic understanding of American history. More specifically, 57% of all Americans don't know we have 9 Supreme Court justices, at least at this time. 60% don't know which countries we fought in World War II. Just 32% can correctly name all 3 branches of government, and I'm not making this up. 2% think that the Cold War was fought over climate change. Yeah, I mean, it's just funny. Anyway, the old Jesuit education maxim was, give me a child until he's 7, I will give you the man. Today's progressive get kids till they're 18 and even 21, and that kind of influence is very hard to match. Those words said by the great Bruce Thornton on Front Page Magazine. The teachers' unions are front and center in the CRT wars. Most recently, the National Education Association had a convention just the beginning of this month, in fact, and a look at the new business items, which are proposed projects and actions from the delegates for the union to pursue during the current year, reveals what the NEA members are really concerned with. Now, this is the membership. CRT was omnipresent this year, and delegates adopted NBIA, which, among other things, has NEA, quote, supporting and leading campaigns that result in increasing the implementation of culturally responsive education, critical race theory, and ethnic studies curricula in pre-K through 12 and in college. NBI 2, which also passed, claims the attacks on anti-racist teachers are increasing, and to fight back, NEA will research the organizations attacking educators doing anti-racist work and or use research already done, put together a list of resources and recommendations for state affiliates, locals, and individual educators to utilize when they are attacked. Now, only the Heritage Foundation was mentioned in the NBI, but the list of anti-CRTers is growing by the day, so hence the $56,000 a union is going to set aside for its opposition research may not be nearly enough. On a similar note, NBI 18, which is adopted, directs NEA, and I quote, to identify, compile, and share existing decolonizing the curriculum resources to educators seeking an anti-racist classroom, and use existing communications and social media to promote it through its affiliates so that rank and file educators can utilize the resources in the classrooms to support its CRT work. NEA is offering a, and I quote, confronting white nationalism in schools toolkit. NBI 39 continues the CRT theme and has the union joining forces with two Marxist groups, Black Lives Matter at School and the Zinn Education Project, to push their agenda, which includes providing a study that critiques empire and white supremacy and other forms of power and oppression at the intersections of our society. The NBI also maintains that October 14th, George Floyd's birthday, should be used as a national day of action to teach lessons about structural racism and oppression. Unmentioned by anybody at the union is student proficiency. And it's very obvious why the subject never came up. The union's clearly not interested in children learning unless they're learning about one of their pet political causes. The latest NAEP, also known as the Nation's Report Card, reveals that just 37% of US 12th graders are proficient in reading, and a pitiful 24%, not even a quarter, are proficient in math in the United States. It's important to note that these results are from 2019, before the union's COVID hysteria forced schools across the country to shut down. So God knows where those numbers are going to be in the next NAEP. At a recent conference, AFT President Randi Weingarten, AFT is the American Federation of Teachers, the other national teachers union, had the, let me clean this up, the audacity to say, let's be clear, critical race theory is not taught in elementary schools or high schools. Yes, she actually said that. It's on tape. It's a method of examination taught in law school and college that helps analyze whether systemic racism exists, in particular whether it has an effect on law and public policy. I just don't know how she could make this stupid statement. There's no other word for it, but stupid, when there's a boatload of evidence to the contrary. And then Randi Weingarten took the gaslighting to another level. If she really believed there was no CRT in K through 12, why would she have Ibram X. Kendi, probably the most vocal and aggressive CRT proponent in the country, speak at the conference? His talk on the AFT website was touted as, quote, "Hear from Dr. Ibram X. Kendi in this free-ranging discussion with student activists and AFT members on his scholarship, and developing anti-racist mindsets and actions inside and outside of classrooms." So as I wrote at the time, I just said, inviting Kendi to speak is like claiming your organization doesn't involve itself in bank robbery, then turn around and have Willie Sutton talk to the flock about the joys of larceny. Why in God's name would she invite Kendi, if she says it's not being taught in K through 12 schools, to speak at a conference for K through 12 teachers? Yeah, so the same man, and this Kendi's a real trip, he contends that capitalism and racism are conjoined twins, and that white terror is American as stars and stripes, and that the only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. And he spoke of the shindig, yet Randi maintains with a straight face that CRT is not taught in schools. Even more bizarrely, just 3 weeks before Weingarten made her claim dismissing CRT, AFT tweeted that Secretary Treasurer Frederick Ingram had appeared on Good Morning America and explained that CRT would give our students the opportunity to understand the full breadth and depth of the American society. So her own union is saying, yes, it is being taught. At the end of Weingarten's speech, Randi made a threat. She said, "Mark my words, our union will defend any member who gets in trouble for teaching honest history." Remember those words? "We have a legal defense fund ready to go, and we are preparing for litigation as we speak. Teaching the truth is not radical or wrong. Distorting history and threatening educators for teaching the truth is truly radical and wrong." Honest history, she said that. Nobody ever gets in trouble for that. I used to teach American history, and I always taught the good and the great about the U.S., and I also taught about the bad and the ugly. My 8th graders learned what was in the California History Framework, which exists as a curricular guide for teachers. Had I strayed from that guide, what I was mandated to teach, and made stuff up, and interjected wacko agenda-driven theories as I went along, I would have been rightfully called on the carpet. Any teacher who veers off the mandated subject matter should lose their job. If AFT wants to defend them, that's their business, but using members' dues to project renegade teachers who teach crackpot ideas should be a wake-up call for all the hardworking, law-abiding teachers. The latter really need to think about belonging to a union. that has Randy Weingarten as its leader. Here in math, the woke train rolls merrily along. In Santa Clara County, California's Office of Education recently lectured its teachers that the U.S. is a parasitic system which has led to domestic violence, drug overdoses, and other societal problems. They say that teachers must awaken students to the oppression and lead them to decode and eventually destroy the dominant political regime. The first step in this process is to help students get into the mind of a white man, such as Christopher Columbus, and analyze what ideology led these white male settlers to be power and land hungry and justify stealing indigenous land through genocide. The lecture also describes the process as transforming students into, remember this, activist intellectuals who decode systems of oppression into their competent parts, including white supremacy, patriarchy, classism, genocide, private property, and God. And then there's math craziness here in California. Before I taught American history, I taught math, and I love teaching math because there's a right and wrong answer. It was real simple. Feelings, opinions, political dogma are relevant, or at least they were then. 2 + 2 = 4. If you have another take, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. Now that the crazies are in charge, though, if you insist on right and wrong answers, you're a racist, really. In fact, until recently, there was something called the proposed math framework, California Math Framework, which was recommended 8 times that teachers use a pathway to equitable math instruction, dismantling racism in mathematics instruction as a resource. This radical drivel insists that addressing student errors, focusing on the right answer, and requiring students to show the work is a form of white supremacy. Objectivity is now racist, you see. And this is really good news. Due to citizen outrage during the public comments period, the state walked back some of its new math mandates, notably dropping the over-the-top pathway to equitable math instruction. The commission agreed to remove references to the toolkit from the math framework, stating it was inconsistent with teaching to the standards. But the war is not over. The framework has not been finalized, and due to yet another rejection to due to public outrage, the California Department of Education will hold off till later this year, early 2022. The battle continues. Also, just a few months ago in May, California decided to eliminate the SAT and the ACT test, which are traditional tests, used as an admission requirement for students to get into the University of California. The ban, which is good through at least 2025, was clearly instituted because Black and Hispanic students did not benefit from the tests. And then we have the ethnic studies curriculum in the form of AB 101. It's still going through the meat grinder in Sacramento. If it passes in its current version, a 1-semester course in ethnic studies will be mandated for students graduating in the 2029-2030 school year and beyond. Each school district will get to choose course content, and those with a Marxist agenda are waiting to pounce. In fact, some of them have already pounced. In Alameda County, the Hayward Unified School District has already approved a $40 million ethnic studies program, which uses something called the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum. The LESMC is infused with critical race theory. It employs every critical race theory buzz term imaginable to get its indoctrination across. For example, it asks students to challenge imperialistic and colonial hegemonic beliefs. Love the lingo here. To critique empire, white supremacy, anti-Blackness, anti-indigeneity, racism, patriarchy. Here's a good one for you, folks. Cis-heteropatriarchy. That's a straight white guys. Capitalism, ableism, anthropocentrism, and other forms of power and oppression at the intersections of society. Don't you love it? In Salinas, a bit to the south of Hayward, Monterey County, parents are up in arms after learning the school district adopted curriculum, which includes reclaiming race as a space of people of color empowerment in the 60s through today, Black power, red power, brown power, yellow power, white allies and solidarity, and the real life education situation as institutional oppression for communities of color, the education debt, opportunity achievement gap, deficit thinking, internalized depression, disconnection, and alienation. That's all like one sentence. Over 1,000 school districts in California, the ethnic study wars, not to mention the mask mandates, which are coming back, will be fought many times throughout the state in the coming years. And to stop the radical bullies, parents must get involved and raise hell at school board meetings. And if the results are not to their liking, you pull your kid out of that school district. Forced masking and indoctrination into radical CRT tenets should not be tolerated by any parent. Okay, how do we get out of all this? Well, it's just dissent, and there are many organizations springing up to fight CRT. Protect Our Kids has done an excellent job of getting the word out, as has Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, shortened to FAIR, Parents Defending Education, Californians for Equal Rights, Alliance for Constructive Ethnic Studies, Educators for Quality and Equality, and many others have sprung up. It'll be worth your while to get on these groups' email lists. They're all on the net. To keep up with the latest doings and find out what you can do. There are lawsuits. The aforementioned Parents Defending Education has filed civil rights complaints against several school districts around the country, arguing that when districts announce the presence of systemic racism in their schools, they're admitting to a violation of federal law and should be subject to penalties, which could include losing federal money. There's legislation, and boy, is there legislation. As of July 15th, just 10 days ago, 26 states have introduced bills or taken other steps that will restrict the teaching of the controversial theory. In fact, 8 states have already enacted bans. Yes, for many government-run schools and increased numbers of private ones, it has come to this: child abuse, plain and simple, and it's being perpetrated in plain sight. And the final thing we can do is school choice. The best way to fight back against CRT is to empower parents. Mike McShane wrote recently that as of July 18th, states have created 7 new choice programs and expanded 21 existing ones. While we've seen years before with numbers like this, with large numbers, we've never seen the depth, breadth, size, and scope of new programs and program expansions that we've seen in 2021, which is why we're here today, people. Let's get this done. Let's get this on the ballot. School choice, California. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Larry. Very helpful and very informative. I see that Lydia Gutierrez came in, a past candidate for the State Board of Education and other offices. Lydia, if you can unmute yourself. Do you have any questions for Larry Sand or some comments about what's happening in your school district?
Thank you so much for calling on me. That's very kind of you. I'm part of the Republican National Hispanic Assembly. We have looked over this issue, and our group has decided to support it and help get the signatures needed. And the reason is that I am in the union. I do support what the union has done for me personally. But as you know, it's a teacher-led organization, and there are teachers that have a purposeful agenda that goes against the values that I believe in. And it's important that we start looking at that. If teachers are not going to get involved and change that agenda that is destroying public education, basically, we have to look at other avenues. And it's just time to look at another avenue. And if you want me to expand more, I can.
Our first person is Monique Hukins.
Yes, I'm here. I have some comments. So I'm a guest teacher in an LA public school district. I will keep that anonymous for now, but you probably know what it is. I suggest that you all at the next school board meeting bring up your concerns, as I have been doing in 3-minute chunks since early December. In the chat, I actually gave you the last board meeting that I spoke at, if you want to share this maybe at the end, because in their agenda, they talked about white supremacy. And I said, I'm also concerned about this. However, I wanted to know where they got their statistical evidence. And then I quoted a doctor who states, and I put this in your chat as well, about 0.04%. Again, I repeat, 0.04% of white people are white supremacists. That's what Kathleen Brush, PhD, says. So that I told that to them, and the president shook her head. I'm floored how she is the president of this Board of Ed. She has rolled her eyes. She has made faces. She's interrupted people that I have gotten to speak at the Board of Education meetings, not just about this, but mainly about the medical mandates. The masks are absolutely going along with this Marxist agenda. I'm sure we all know by now there's scientific evidence that they're not working against this virus. And so this is just to compel our communication. Another thing I wanted to mention, and I'm not sure if it was this meeting that I was on before, and I got shy because I, in the autumn, had a very bad experience, which again, I will remain nameless. But there were union members that got very angry that when what you brought up about the George Floyd Day.
Right, yeah. That's
Yeah,
what
and
she's talking-
BLM members coming into the school. So at the time, I was hosting a podcast, and I had gotten information that an attorney, and you could see it on his Facebook page, he states, brace yourself if you don't know this, he states that George Floyd was his client who passed away in 2016 in Corpus Christi, Texas, from a synthetic marijuana reaction. This is still on his Facebook page. He is a barred license, a licensed attorney. His name is Attorney Timothy Daniel Jaffet. And all I wanted to tell them was I had spoken to him with another activist, and how I believe that people of color should be respected and uplifted. But I was concerned that BLM had not denounced violence and had joined forces with Antifa. I was called all sorts of names. I literally became ill from that in my stomach. These people, they have an agenda. I was cut off, and I'm asking for, I'm actually pro-union to an extent, but not the way these people are behaving. And I was listening to, again, I have to make this anonymous, but a huge call of a union, which has been mentioned on here. And I have asked many questions. I talked to the operator. They never bring up my questions for everyone. So this is an absolute debauchery of what the unions are supposed to be doing for the teachers. And I do want you to know there are some concerned teachers. They're just afraid to speak out. I just happen to keep speaking out.
Okay. I want to agree with both speakers so far. Monique, let me say to you that you would be shocked, or maybe not so shocked, but you would be shocked if you knew the number of teachers who have signed our petition and support our cause. It's a very large number, I can assure you. And many of them say, oh, I'm a little nervous. I don't want them to find out. I don't, but they are in favor of the idea. You are not alone at all. And they're not anti-union people. They believe in, they believe they should have job protections, but they want the kids to get the best possible education. My question is for Larry, and it's sort of a general question. His speech was excellent. Like, if anything, he understated the case. He could have gone on much longer, I'm sure. But I'm wondering if we can access the statistics that he was giving at the beginning, where he was listing how little the kids know, their lack of proficiency in math and history, and how 24% don't know the three branches of government and things like that. I would love to get access to those stats for the school board.
Doug, if you want to shoot me an email, I'll be happy to send you all the stats I talked about. Okay?
Terrific. Thank you.
Sure.
This is Janice Hauser, and I have a query for the group. My husband and I have been following around parents who are going to school board meetings, who are fighting these mask requirements and critical race theory, comprehensive sex ed, and they are incredibly thwarted by the school boards. People come to speak to the school board, and they get there at 3, the meeting's supposed to be at 6, and they find out that before them, the teachers union had already been there at 8 in the morning, and they'd already signed for requests for public comment. And so the parents were going to speak at 10:30, and then Black Lives Matter show up, and Antifa shows up, and you know, those kind of things go on. We were at Redlands School Board the other day, and the parents were the meeting was supposed to start at 7, and at 8 o'clock, they came out and said, all of you have to wear masks. And if one person says that they will not wear a mask, none of you will be allowed to speak at the school board. Then they started calling the police. About it's almost like a third of the Redlands Police Department was there to protect the school board against these very benign, peaceful parents. And, you know, I mean, and they didn't get in the meeting till 9 o'clock at night. They stood out at 7 to 9 on the steps of the entrance to the boardroom, and they were not able to speak until 9. I just have a question. What can we do about that?
Well, would you like a union rep to tell you? This is Lydia Gutierrez.
Yeah.
Hauser, what you can do is, first of all, for how these people write letters, email the letters to the board. They will get them, they will actually read them. And also be aware of that if you have these are teachers that are putting themselves first before the parents. Nothing stops those parents from going to those schools and confronting those teachers as they're coming out of the parking lot and saying, allow my voice to be heard. I am the parent of your child you're teaching.
That's a good idea.
So that's another new approach you can consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, first of all, it really depends on the school board. Getting into LA and changing those people's minds is a monumental job. It's such a huge district, but in smaller districts, a lot of people know the school board members. And as somebody said, yeah, confront them and go in groups. Don't go alone. Whatever you do, don't go alone, because people will just write you off as a racist, crackpot, lunatic, whatever. But if you're going with 10, 20, 100 people, whatever you do, whether it's going into school board meetings or standing outside school board meetings or standing in the parking lot, carry signs, call the media, be loud. You know, the time for being nice, frankly, is over. It's long past that. And I'm not suggesting violence. I'm not suggesting do anything crazy, but you must be very aggressive, assertive, and dare I say, pushy. Okay. And and you must do it in groups, whatever you do, and things will change, because, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, you know that. Things will change when enough people really set their mind to it. And school board members run for school board. That's another thing you can do. If you have some ideas and you're a leader and you have some parental backing, run for school board. If you have some money, help that person become a school board member, because it's going to take money, because the unions have been known to stock school boards and they have an endless supply of money, which they take from teachers. So anyway, so just to sum up what I'm saying is, get out in the streets, be forceful, get the media involved, talk to the people who need to be talked to.
Okay. You had said with CRT curriculum, whatever, it's a violation of federal law and that they would lose federal money. That's where we're heading. We have to have some lawsuits. Could you give me some information on which laws? Where do I start? Because I'm taking the first, well, I took the first step already, but this is my second.
Okay, well, all I can tell you is, you know, when you're running afoul of civil rights laws when you start dividing people up by race and class. And this is where the state laws are going. The legislation is going in this direction. A good legislation doesn't call out CRT by name. It just forbids schools from making judgments by race. there's also an abuse angle by calling a 6-year-old, telling us a white 6-year-old who's oppressing his black 6-year-old friend in kindergarten. This is nuts.
And I would now like to move and turn it over to our president, Mr. Michael Alexander. And I think he might have a few suggestions on what we might do to make significant changes in our California school system. Michael Alexander.
Hey, great. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Larry Sand, for another wonderful scholarly presentation of the problems we have in the state of California and throughout the country. You know, this morning after we sent out our notice, our second follow-up notice regarding this afternoon's meeting, I got a call from a guy who apparently doesn't, or excuse me, an email from a guy who apparently doesn't pay a lot of attention to our site. But his question to me was to state my position: do we support or oppose a CRT, critical race theory, or whatever they're calling it here? I'm not a fan of it, but the problem with teaching CRT is not its content, but the coercion that is involved. You can teach whatever you want to your own kids, right, wrong, or different, or in between. But I oppose cramming down a particular kind of political indoctrination or a particular view of history and doing it through the vehicle of government. That is the coercion. That's the problem, and I'm opposed to it all. I'm Catholic, but I'm opposed to a public school incorporating Catholic theology and making kids memorize the catechism and subscribe to my tenets of faith. I'm completely opposed to it. And that's why the problem always was not prayer in the public schools, prayer in the classroom. The problem was government in the classroom. And that is still our problem 50 years later, since the big fight against school prayer that began in the 50s and 60s and has been raging ever since. We need to take our kids out. We now know what government will do when it has no opposition. And I can tell you this, that the teaching of critical race theory will stop if we pass not a law against critical race theory instruction, but if we pass school choice. What is school choice here in the state of California? Our school choice proposal will be found in our 4 points. And I always repeat these because we get so many new folks on here. We are proposing an initiative that is entitled the Education Freedom Initiative. And it has 4 key provisions. Number 1, an education savings account, otherwise known as an ESA, will be established for every TK through 12 child in California requesting one. Once that is set up, number 2, the parents, not the politicians, will receive, that account will be credited with approximately $14,000 per year, which represents right now the average spending under Prop 98. That's not all that we spend on schooling. It's in excess of $20,000. And in fact, in some districts like LAUSD, that amount is $25,000, $30,000, or $35,000 a year, assuming that you can figure out cartel finances. But right now we're making it the same throughout the state, $14,000 per student. Number 3, again, the parents, not the politicians, can direct that money to a participating school, including an accredited private or parochial, or sometimes known as a religious school, and say, provided only that it's accredited. Number 4, any money left over can be saved for college, for vocational training, or other qualified educational expense. So in other words, what the parents need to do, all of you out there, yes, go down to the school board meeting, send a letter to a tyrant, send faxes. I'm sure that they'll spend all day long reading those things. And then they will do exactly nothing, because state law, more than anything else, prevents those local school boards from doing anything, even if they were inclined to do so. And I can assure you that if any of those school board members start actually taking the citizens and parents seriously, they will find themselves out of office. They'll find Jimmy Hoffa's body first before they ever find them. They're going to be gone. So don't waste time right now on going to school board meetings. If you got a little time, great. But the first thing that you do is to go on our site, get signed up. Number two, give us a little love, $2, $5, $10, $20 per month, so that you can support us like the teachers unions, which pay $83.33 every month, $1,000 per year for their entire career. That's what they invest in political action. You need to match it at least at 10% of that. Let me tell you, that's what we have to do. Then number three, stand by. And now I can give you an update. We will be presenting our final language to the Attorney General for what is known as title and summary. We expect to be gathering signatures by the middle of September, and certainly in time to launch our major, and this pun is intended, signature event, which will be Super Sunday, October 2nd and 3rd of this year. That's just 6 to 8 weeks away. And what you need to do, send us an email right now, those of you who haven't, and tell us that you volunteer. And what we need throughout the state of California is 1,000, 1,500 different churches, synagogues, mosques, supermarkets. I don't care where you are. Pick a fire hydrant. I don't even care if you believe in God. Go to a church anyway. Help a friend who's out there and get these signatures. And if you want to have an impact on those people who are preaching CRT, that's what you do. Because ultimately, you've got to break up that monopoly when you have no way to take your children out of there because you're economically coerced to do so. They take your money, stick you in a zip code, and that's where you and your kid are going to be stuck with no alternative. You don't even have any choice within the system, ladies and gentlemen, none whatsoever. If you enact the, help us to pass the California School Choice Initiative, you will have that freedom. And when that law is passed, not an anti-CRT law, but when that law is passed, that CRT stuff will change. And I can tell you the day, and I can tell you the time, in fact. It'll be 10 p.m., the first Tuesday in November 2022, when school choice passes. That's when all this craziness will stop, because parents throughout the state will be hitting those exits, and the sound that they make will sound like a sonic boom. They're going to pick it up over here at Caltech on the Richter scale, because parents are going to leave. And when that happens, like any other business, they'll straighten up and fly right, or they'll go out of business. When we're going to make no rules affecting the operation of those schools, because only they can change it. Only they will change it when they have enough pressure. That's what we do. and I want to follow one of Doug's points here, which is extremely important, and that is the number of teachers who support this. Let's start with the fact that 30% in some areas, 30% or more of public school teachers actually send their children to public school. Now, why do they do it? Because they can. Because they get good salaries and benefits. It lets them send their children to quality schools. And then when you get into the schools that are really failing, those teachers may send their children to a public school, but they don't send it to the public school that they teach at, Believe me, they don't. They look for a good school in a good neighborhood. And so we need to stop tearing down communities, forcing people to move to find a different zip code and a better school, and then maybe have to pay another $250,000, $500,000, or $1 million for a home so that they can get access to good quality education. And this is just another way in which so many people have to pay for education once and then pay for it all over again. Let's take a few minutes to understand how school financing actually works. Prop 98 is the basic school funding law in the state of California, and it earmarks about 40 to 45% of all tax revenues for this enterprise we call K-12. Which means that no matter who you are right now, whether you went to public school or didn't, whether you have children in the school now or not, you are paying for your K-12 education. 40% of the taxes that you pay go for education. So let's not listen to anybody on any side of the political spectrum, Republican, Democrat, Independents, or anybody in between, telling you the government is giving you something. They're not giving you anything. You're going to pay for this and pay and pay and pay. The only question is whether you'll get it. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, school choice is taking off around the country and in California. I was up in Sacramento with one of the candidates for governor, Kevin Kiley. He gave a speech that I would be glad to have given, and he endorsed school choice heartily. We, of course, do not endorse any candidates because we're nonpartisan, we're non-sectarian, we are nonprofit. We have Democrats in our movement, we have Republicans, everybody in between. In other words, we call these people Americans. We call our supporters Californians interested in the future. Larry Elder, the school choice is a key part of his platform. I don't know about Kevin Faulconer, but we have others coming on, and we encourage Democrats, candidates especially, to break with the unions and to break with the rest of their party and to embrace the best interests of their children. We have a wall of fame and we have a wall of shame. And we want as many Democrat candidates as possible to join it so that all of us here can once again get on the same side when it comes to education. And that is to take it back from the public employee unions and restore control to the parents who ought to be directing the future of their children. They have a natural right to control the intellectual, moral, and religious formation of their children without being economically coerced into sending their children to a government school that teaches values counter to theirs and in fact counter to those held by Americans. We get a lot of stuff going on here. I want to thank everybody for coming, especially Larry Sand there. Does he have his doctorate? If not, we'll promote him to doctor here. A doctor of school choice. And we'll leave it open here for some questions or comments.
Okay, Rudy Melendez, do you have a question?
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for having these meetings, and to Larry Sand, who I've listened to and know a little bit on a personal note. His presentations are alarming and informative. I just wanted to make a few comments. I'm a San Fernando Valley resident, and I wanted to make aware for those of you that are on this call that our San Fernando Valley state legislators, Luz Rivas in the northeast end of the San Fernando Valley, Jesse Gabriel in the west end of the San Fernando Valley, and Adrian Nazarian in the south San Fernando Valley all voted for AB 101. They support ethnic studies in California schools as a requirement to get a diploma of graduation. And this past week, my sister, who lives in Dallas, our family's from California originally. I'm an LA native, born in Good Samaritan Hospital in downtown LA. My father worked in the retail industry, and we moved to Texas in the early 80s to finish high school and go to college. My sister raised her kids in Dallas, and she shared a link with me this past week of a communist radical group called Dallas Justice Organization that is submitting a pledge to what they're calling white liberal across wealthy school districts in the Dallas area. I put the link in the chat. I just wanted to mention it. It's awful. You need to see this, what this group is asking people to do. It's just really horrible. I don't want to take too much time and read the pledge, but the link is in the chat. And again, thank you, Michael, for bringing me into the group, and to Larry again for your presentation, and for everyone on the call.
By the way, what's your first name?
My name's Rudy Melendez.
Rudy, Mike here. Rudy, I just got one question for you and for everybody else on this broadcast. What church, synagogue, or supermarket or fire hydrant are you going to be out in front of on Super Sunday weekend, October 2nd or 3rd?
That would probably be Osborne Neighborhood Church in Arleta.
Perfect. You know, that these communities of faith are going to lead the way, many others as well. But please send me an email as soon as you get off, mike@californiaschoolchoice.org, and tell me what that church is, and we'll get you up on the web. Excuse me, up on the screen, the appointments and the events page. We'll make sure that you get the training and the materials, and find a friend or two to help you hold that site down. Thanks again for being on, Rudy. Next question.
Thank you.
Okay, Stephen?
Well, I think we covered a little bit of it. I was, really curious how many people there are willing to make that time commitment of being able to go out and actually be ready to collect signatures. I don't pretend it's easy, but it's the only way that we can win. It's the only way that we can get on the ballot. And I can't think of a better way than identifying some meeting place that you can be at and be recognized. And we're finding most of the interest currently, and it's cross-denominational, is on churches. I know right in the area of our home office, this very Sunday, there was 2 different churches that had tables out in front of them with a school choice banner. And we really need to see that happening literally everywhere all over the state. It is a commitment of time. We do have some materials and banners that you can either have made up yourself and use our templates or order it. I would recommend please contact our office, go to our website and contact Judy Binney and see what you can do about getting a copy of some of the materials you can replicate and hand out, or go with a group of people and raise some money. Any ideas on that, Michael?
Yes. The major thing is just to let us know where you're at. That's the key deal. And just to give you a couple of ideas, I was on a show last night where several people were calling in from an event down in Santa Ana called Basta, B-A-S-T-A, which of course in Spanish means enough. Right up here, basta. And then the parents were down there from all different parties. Candidates are launching their candidates, basing it on school choice. We have a number of people are doing so. That's key. We have all of our materials here, that our team here, Todd Madison, Andrew Coe, helped design with Dr. Broom, and of course you, Steve. We've got a ton of materials, but that's the key thing. You just get in there. If you guys, are Catholic, let us know. We have Catholic outreach, particularly here in the southern counties, but from all over the state. We're getting support from the Archdiocese. Don't even talk about those evangelical churches. Those Protestant evangelical churches are absolutely on fire over what's happening in the state and the started back with sex ed and whatnot. The key thing is this freedom agenda, which puts money back into your control, is intoxicating and it's dangerous. And that's why they're not letting you talk in these public forums. And the more they try to shut us up, the surer it is that we have to go another route. Hey, Dr. Dale, are you still there, sir?
Yes, I'm here.
There he is. Yeah, you were at an event. Now, of course, we're nonpartisan. We go to a lot of different events that are, all the way from farmers markets to recall events. But you were at a big event out there in Chino the other night. Maybe you could describe the reception you received on school choice.
Yeah, Doug Hauser and I both went out, and a number of other people from our school choice movement, including Wendy Byer and Nita Rhodes. A number of us were out at this rally that was a recall rally held in Chino at one of the airport hangars there in Chino. And they had, it's hard to know, but it seems like there were at least 800 to 1,000 people there at this event. I don't know exactly how many, but we had a number of the speakers who were talking about the need for recall of the governor. And one of the primary issues was education.
Right.
We need these kids back in school. We need the mask taken off. We need to basically get school choice in this state. So they had several gubernatorial candidates that were invited to come and speak. Only one of them Kevin Kiley was there. Larry Elder was sick, couldn't make it, but Larry spoke several times in support of school choice. We had a number of people who came by our table and signed our pre-petition, and they didn't just sign, they said, we're here to volunteer. So we had a number of people sign up to volunteer for school choice. And I actually made several contacts where they said, I have a business in this particular part of your county. You can set up right in front of our business and collect signatures. And that was very, very positive. Yeah.
Love it. Yeah. And, I was on, as I mentioned, a show last night, a political show. And it was oriented to Republicans, but the one thing that I wanted to make clear to everybody is not only is school choice not a partisan affair, it's not a Republican. We've got everybody in this movement, but the recall movement, which is perceived as a Republican effort, is not a Republican movement. There are huge numbers of Democrats who are out there urging the recall of the governor precisely because of what Dr. Dale just described, and that is what's happening in education, what's not happening, the closures, the masks, the whole bit, complete dissatisfaction, and that dissatisfaction with education is the number one driving force, followed very closely by shutting down the economy in the state and so forth. The recall is not a partisan issue. And it's important that those who are sometimes critical of us understand that, and you can bet that they're going to try to say the school choice is nothing but a Republican ploy. In fact, it's not. I don't even think Larry Elder's a Republican, is he? It's not. We need to understand this. So you are not alone. Go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, yes, Larry is running as a Republican. But I will say, we have had a number of signers for our pre-petition in support of school choice who are libertarian, who are Democrats, who are no party preference. It is far beyond just a Republican issue.
It is. This is California. And what school choice and recall represents is a realignment of California politics. And I think that we're in kind of a post-partisan phase. And that's where we are in terms of public policy. Our commitment is not to any party or really to any ideology. We're committed to families and we're committed to freedom. Free men, free markets. We can do this here in the state of California. So the key, everybody just, if you want to help, give me your name, give us a few love bucks. We can always use that. I got to raise a heck of a lot of money, and your small commitment of money will permit me to raise large amounts of money. We already have, we're raising more, but we need everybody's buy-in. But in particular, I need you to call me right now today and say, look, I attend this particular church, or I know some people, or I'm willing to link up, give me a place, let me know where you're going to be on kickoff day. Hugely important for us, and then we'll get you on the web, get you trained. And we got some of the best grassroots people in the world are working on this already. And we've been doing grassroots organization for over 2.5 years. And that's just on school choice. Many people have worked on many projects and campaigns before. So we're not amateurs over here, even though some people haven't heard of us. One last anecdote here, or for me, I was talking with one of our members who is at a scholar conference down in for classical schools down in South Carolina. And when he got back there, you know what the big buzz was? School choice in California, it's coming. And these are people that I'm sure I haven't spoken with, but because of your efforts, everybody out there, the word is getting out, is spreading, and our adversaries, the people who are exploiting and abusing our children, they know the hell is coming to breakfast. And that's you. You're going to help me do it. Any final questions or comments?
Okay, I just want to reiterate, not only is this nonpartisan, I want to tell all potential volunteers, this is fun. Once you get your little pitch down so you can describe the program, describe how the initiative works, people are on your side immediately. And you are talking to parents, you are talking to grandparents, you're talking to aunts and uncles of kids. People want to hear about this issue. And the number one reaction is, why didn't they think of this 20 years ago? Or where do I sign? This is not a hard sell at all. Just describing how it works, those 4 points, and people go, that is such a great idea. So I want to encourage everybody. It's very, very enjoyable to be out there and meeting people and feel that you're part of something so important and so valuable.
And if anyone wants us to join them, if they're novices at this, we will join them and they can hear how we do our pitch and, be with them.
All right. Thank you. I'm seeing some people that we haven't recognized. Marcia Fritz.
Yeah, I've been involved on these initiatives before. One of my clients was the Arno Arno folks, that actually did a lot of signature gathering professionally. And we've got to be, and I'm sure you've already gone through this, but we've got to be use the social network to get these petitions out so people can sign them and turn them back in, hopefully with money. That's one thing. I just don't see that in your discussion. The social media is so important for this activity, just like we did for the recall election. And then the other thing is, since we are having a recall election about the same time we're trying to get these petitions signed, we should be really leveraging our exposure by trying to go to these events that are already gathering a lot of people that tend to be upset with Governor Newsom as far as the way he handled schools during the COVID. And there are natural events, and we if we could piggyback with that group somehow, I think we'll get a lot more exposure. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, thank you. Which events did you have in mind where you're at that you can organize and get some people out there?
Well, it would be the candidates. If they've got an event, where they're going to be speaking, or it looks like they're going to have a lot of people, then you just contact them and say, would you mind if we have a table?
Right.
So, we're not political. We're not partisan.
Well, as you might imagine,
but
we have been doing a lot of that. But my question was, if you have a specific event that you had in mind, we'd like to get you up on the web and up on our website here, so that people know that you're organizing that event out there and that you'll be helping to obtain information on voters who are ready to participate. We'd sure appreciate your help up there. I think you're in the Sacramento area, aren't you?
Yeah,
Yeah, great.
So we don't know because they just got the slate of candidates, so we don't know who's having an event when
Right.
necessarily, but it's going to start coming. So if it's within the geographical area, yeah, for sure.
Great. Well, we have a couple of really top leaders up there. Jonathan Zackerson, who was also heading up the Reopen movement. Another lady, Laura Chappie, up there, so they can help you get organized and get involved. And the key thing for us right now is to make sure that we are concretely specific to a particular event. Now, we know that we're going to have petitions on the first weekend in October, or pretty darn close to that. So what I'm looking for is a highly specific commitment of everybody on this. We want 1,000 to 1,500 venues rolling out the first weekend that we have petitions. First weekend we get the petition, print them up. We get a lag of around 10 days there between the time we get our petition, print that monster up, and then get it out. But I sure appreciate your comments, Marcia. You and I have had a chance to talk before. It's good to see you. See you.
Doug Hauser here. Doug Hauser here. And I'd like to say, I believe both Larry Elder and Kevin Kiley have already stated that they would like to have a school choice table at every one of their events. So you don't need permission. All you need to do is coordinate with their campaigns to be at any event that you know of in your neighborhood.
Right.
I see that Dale Quasney still has a hand up. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I wanted to know, first of all, the final wording on the legislation, the bill, or the initiative, I should say, where can we see that?
It'll be posted here this coming week. Tell me what would prevent you from voting for school choice.
Well, I was reading some of the legislation that was on the website, and it seemed like, and I needed to clarify that there was a cap on the scholarship, and I wasn't quite sure. That was hooked to the reduced or free lunch amounts that are given. So I want to know if that's for everybody or specific.
I don't know about the free lunch program, but we have I wouldn't say entirely different, but substantially revised version, and that'll be up on our website here probably this week. And there is no cap. So, whatever you want to save for.
I mean, cap on the income to be able to receive.
No, there's no means testing whatsoever.
Okay, because it said like it was twice the amount that. Yeah. The amount that people that get free lunches.
No, great question. And that is not, it's going to be 14,000. That'll be adjusted up or down with Prop 98 revenues in the future. And at the
okay, do you have an address that people can send in donations who don't like to do
yes,
online? Is it on the website?
Yes, ma'am. Do you have something to write with?
Can they just put it in the chat?
Now, why don't you put in can you put it in there, Emery, the 936 number?
Yeah,
Can they see it if I write it in? All right.
It's also on our website too.
Yeah.
So,
936 East Green Street.
Yeah.
Number one.
Do you have any objections to combining it with Recall Gascon, the LADA?
What do you mean combining it?
I mean, like I'm doing petition signings for that. So
no, you're a citizen. With First Amendment rights, you can mix and match, do whatever you want. We're just looking for valid signatures, and we have different people going about it in different ways all the time.
Yeah. And then,
there's
the Pruneyard decision that you can cite if people give you a hassle.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, we have that.
I'd like to add, we've had people doing that all along. So.
Oh, okay. I also want to know, do you have banners and big signs and stuff? I mean, I'm trying to make up an erase board, but it keeps getting erased when I put it back in my car. So I was wondering if you had signs that were actually printed up that we could purchase or get or something.
Dale, call the office.
Judy?
Call and talk to Judy Benny, and
We
Okay.
have 'em.
we can help you with that.
All right, that
Yeah.
was
And that
it,
reminds
mainly
me-
the
That reminds me-
legislation is what I want.
Yeah, that reminds me that on our website, we should have some instructions there. I'm just talking out loud to everybody here. Materials that can be reproduced, and many of them can be sent over to Costco, and they give you a nice, I don't know what, 20 by 30 or something. We are going to have some other materials, but there's lots of stuff that you can do. Pick up an easel, get that. We're going to have a lot of materials available. We're doing that now, courtesy of our very generous donors. So we need your help. Any other questions? Thank you, Dale.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You may have already answered it, and if you could just tell me quickly, how many signatures do we need to gather, and what is the time period for the signature gathering?
Great question. The answer is a minimum 1 million good valid signatures, which means we'll have to gather about 1.5 so they can't cheat. We need to make it hard. You have 180 days from the time that the Attorney General sends you what he calls title and summary, 180 days to get the thing printed, get it distributed, gather all your signatures, and then resubmit. In practice, you've got about 155 days if you take off about 10 to 15 days in the front, 10 to 15 days on the back. So it's a pretty rapid pace. That's why we all have to commit to being places right now and right through the end of it.
And you stated that it's the first weekend of October. That's when you're planning the 180-day start?
That thereabouts. I expect to get title and summary somewhere around the middle of September. So, but I've got lead time. So the first big weekend will likely be October 2nd, 3rd.
The beauty of getting the signatures is usually when you get a signature, you have a guaranteed vote for it. That's the beauty of the signature.
Yes, that's correct. And we're going to be doing some other things too that will permit us to legally gather a second signature and information so that when someone signs our petition, we can legally contact them, which otherwise you can't.
I'm going to go, as you know, I'm on with the Republican National Hispanic Assembly. So we're going to be committed to, if you have a Hispanic population, as you know, 51% of California is Hispanic. So it has to be a very strong outreach in the Hispanic community. So
let's get together, if not this week, early next week. I mean, we're pedaling hard and fast. In fact, I want to. I've got your phone number, so we'll get together because we want to talk with everybody. In the minute we're talking to the priests in the city.
Can you go ahead and
now we want to talk with there's a lot of Latino Protestant ministers and evangelicals. We very definitely need to talk with them.
Let me go ahead and make a comment on the Catholic churches. Many of the Catholic churches did have private schools, and when the pandemic hit, they had quite a few had to close. Yes. Now that they're trying to get back up, this is going to be something very important to them, but the message has to get out to them.
You're right, and we're gonna. I appreciate your offer of help and participation. We have a plan for it. We're executing now. We need more help. And by the way, what church will you be in front of on October 2nd and 3rd? Which parish do you attend or church?
I have no comment on that.
Okay, well, Whether you attend it or not, pick one. You see what I mean? This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get concrete. This is where grassroots movements stumble. We want to get very, so I did not mean to invade your privacy, but we want to get concrete. On that weekend, I'll be in front of St. Andrews here or St. Cyril's, St. Cyril of Jerusalem in San Fernando Valley. Everybody needs to be somewhere and have something happen so it doesn't get vague. But I'm sure nobody's run for office longer than you have. You know what we're doing.
CM, are you still there? There you go.
I am. My question is very simple. Many of the California homeschoolers are interested in knowing, will they be able to access any of these funds of the $14,000? How do homeschool parents access this money?
Hey, I can let somebody else answer besides me. Dr. D, he's on the drafting committee with me.
Yeah, so right now we have, in this state, we have two types of homeschoolers in general. There are ones that are working as a private homeschool affidavit, okay, where they are completely separate, not taking any money from the government. What we're going to do for the private school affidavit homeschoolers is that they will be able to get an ESA account set up for their child and accumulate funds in that at the same rate as everybody else, $14,000 roughly per year. But until they're enrolled in an accredited school, they cannot use those funds. So what this will be is basically a college savings fund. Now, some people who homeschool decide, hey, when I hit high school, I'm going to enroll them in a private school. Well, once they're enrolled in a private accredited school, they can start accessing those funds and use those for tuition. But for those who want to stay private homeschool affidavit the entire way, K through 12, they'll basically be able to use that as a college savings account. Now, for those who are homeschooling through a charter school currently, what they can do is they can link up with an accredited private school and be able to access those funds for K through 12 education. Now, most of them can educate for far less than $14,000 a year. So that basically, let's say they only spend $4,000 a year, they could accumulate 10 grand per year over 12 years, and they basically have that available for college or vocational training. And again, at any point when they, if they decide to go full-time with an accredited school, they can use that. So they can change from year to year depending on what their plans are as far as their child's education. But the key is they have to be able to get those funds, they need to be enrolled in an accredited school.
Great. Can we go to the custom bag now? The custom bag.
Hi, thank you, Stephen. Just a quick question, and this is really for Lydia. I wanted to, if she could just tell me again or tell us what organization she's with. I'm Hispanic and I'm fully bilingual, and I would love to take this message in Spanish to the Hispanic community.
Get on my sound as fast as I can. I'm a part of the Republican National Hispanic Assembly of California. You can check us out on the website, and I'll be happy to put in my my email address, and you can contact me.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. By the way, we do have banners and flyers in Spanish. We have a 6-foot by 2-foot banner in Spanish at this time. Samuel.
Yeah, I got a quick question. One thing I think that hampered some of the earlier recall Newsom efforts was that people couldn't print out the petition at home because it could only be on legal size paper. I was wondering if this petition, if there's going to be an 8.5 by 11 version of it or not, for easy like sharing, when you're not in person.
Okay, everybody listen up carefully, because you're so right, Samuel. You're right on, and so forth. It would be very helpful if this could be downloaded and printed, but it really can't. California law requires that a petition be circulated on a single piece of paper, right? Not stapled together, not bound together or stitched together. A single piece of continuous paper stretches from here to there with everything on it, plus the signatures. That kind of document cannot be downloaded effectively. A one pager, you could do that, 8.5 by 14 or 8.5 by 11, but we really can't. It's going to be too long. So great idea, Samuel, but we're just not going to be able to do that under state law. So that's one of the reasons why our printing and logistics are going to be very challenging.
Okay, one last question, Marcia Fritz.
Yeah, it's not a question. It's just a comment. Having been through many of these with my client, the Arno folks, there's going to be a competing petition. I have no doubt the teachers are going to be coming up with something that sounds like ours, but it isn't. And so you got to be careful when people say, well, I've already signed. They might not have signed ours. They might have signed the competing petition. It's a very common strategy that the other side uses, is to confuse people. So just a FYI, we got to be ready for that and have a plan in place if and when that happens.
Yes, I expect we planned for that from the very beginning. In fact, I'm surprised we haven't had a competing conservative measure. We might see it yet, and the one that the teachers come up with will come right out of their captive legislature there, and they'll figure out what it is and put one of their own on there. But one way or the other, we're going to force them to react to us rather than us running around trying to say pretty please to tyrants and dictators and to argue with them about our own kids and our own money. And but advice well taken, Marcia.
And with that, I would like to thank everybody. It's been a great evening. We thank especially Larry Sand, our president, Michael Alexander, our Zoom moderator, Anne Marie, and our contributor with the invocation at the beginning, and expert, Dr. Dale Broom. Blessings to you all. We hope to see you out there in the trenches working for school choice. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you.